Everyone laughed at the crazy old woman walking an invisible dog. Agatha walked down the street at exactly 5 p.m. She held a red leather dog leash in her hand. The townspeople stared at her from their windows. Some shook their heads. Others whispered. But Agatha did not care. She smiled and talked to the empty air beside her knee. The end of the leash dragged on the dirty sidewalk. There was no dog. Her beloved golden retriever, Max, had died 3 months ago. The pain was too heavy for her heart. So, her mind simply refused to accept it. She kept her daily routine, walking a ghost. "Come on, Max," she whispered. "Don't smell that trash can." She gently pulled the empty leather strap. She stopped at the big oak tree, waiting patiently. A little girl pointed at her, but her mother quickly pulled her away. Agatha just smiled, living inside her own safe, fragile dream. The sun slowly went down, painting the sky orange. Agatha walked toward the old park. It was their favorite place. She sat down heavily on a wooden bench to rest her tired legs. She let the leash rest on the green grass, still holding the handle tightly in her hand. She closed her eyes and breathed in the cool evening air. Suddenly, her eyes flew open. She felt a sharp, sudden pull on the leash. The leather strap tightened completely. Her heart stopped beating for a second. The weight at the other end was real. Someone or something was there. Her hands shook violently. Was she finally going crazy? Or was it a miracle? "Max," she whispered, her voice breaking. She slowly turned her head to look down at the grass. The leash was pulled tight. But it was not a ghost pulling it from the other side. Down in the tall grass, a pair of dirty brown eyes stared back at her. It was a stray dog. He was very thin and covered in dark mud. His fur was messy. He had accidentally caught the metal clip of the leash in his mouth while searching for food. The stray dog froze. He looked at the old woman with pure fear. He dropped the metal clip immediately. Before Agatha could speak or move, the dog turned around. He ran as fast as lightning into the dark bushes, disappearing completely. Agatha sat alone, staring at the empty grass. The leash was empty again. But the feeling of that sudden pull stayed in her hand. She stood up slowly and brushed the dirt off her coat. She called out softly into the darkness, but nothing answered. She walked home, unaware of the shadow following exactly 3 steps behind. The streetlights flickered on as she reached her front door. She felt a strange warmth in her chest. The town thought she was crazy. But tonight, the empty collar did not feel so empty anymore. The next day, the whispers in the town grew louder. People were losing their patience with Agatha's strange habit. A young man named Tom watched her from a bar window. He was drunk and angry. He decided he needed to teach the old woman a hard lesson about reality. Agatha was walking past the dark alley near the bar. The sun had already set. Tom stepped out of the shadows, blocking her path. He smelled like cheap beer and smoke. He pointed a finger at her face, laughing loudly. "There is no dog, old lady," he shouted cruelly. Agatha stepped back in fear. She held the empty leash tightly to her chest. "Please let us pass," she said with a shaking voice. Tom shook his head. He reached out his large hand to grab the red leather leash. "I will throw this away to help you wake up." He grabbed the strap and pulled hard. Agatha fell to her knees, crying. Just as Tom raised his arm to throw the leash, a terrifying sound echoed from the dark alley. It was a deep, violent growl. It did not sound like a normal dog. It sounded like a monster. Tom froze. His face turned pale white. Two glowing yellow eyes appeared in the total darkness of the narrow alley. Sharp white teeth flashed under the dim streetlight. A low, warning bark shook the silent air. It was a clear promise of extreme violence if Tom did not move. The drunk man dropped the leash immediately. He raised his hands in pure panic. He did not wait to see the animal. He turned around and ran down the street as fast as his legs could move. He screamed for help, disappearing into the cold night without looking back once. Agatha remained on the cold ground, breathing heavily. She looked into the dark alley. The glowing eyes were gone. The terrifying growls had stopped. There was only total silence. She picked up the red leash from the dirty sidewalk and slowly stood up, brushing off her long winter coat. She did not run away. She did not scream for the police. Instead, a warm, peaceful smile spread across her wrinkled face. She looked down at the empty space next to her left knee. She gently reached out her hand and patted the invisible air with pure, deep love. "Good boy, Max," she whispered softly. "Thank you for protecting me." She truly believed her dead golden retriever had returned from heaven as a ghost. She proudly walked home. She did not know a small, dirty stray dog was quietly walking behind her, watching her every single step. The stray dog did not understand human ghosts. He only understood survival and smells. For years, he had lived a harsh life on the cold streets. People usually kicked him or threw stones at him. But the old woman was different. She carried a strange, heavy sadness around her. Dogs can smell human emotions. To the stray, Agatha smelled like deep, freezing sorrow. Her body language was broken and tired. Her pain reminded him of his own lonely life. By pure instinct, he decided to follow her. He became her silent shadow, keeping exactly 3 steps behind. He was highly intelligent. He watched her strange daily walks very carefully. He noticed she stopped at specific places for no reason. She would wait near a blue mailbox. She would pause at a large pine tree. The stray dog used his nose to solve the invisible mystery. At the base of the pine tree, he smelled a very old, faded scent. It was the smell of another dog. It was Max's old scent mark from many months ago. Suddenly, the stray understood. The old woman was not walking nothing. She was following the ghost of a memory. The stray decided to play the part. He began to step exactly where Max used to step. When Agatha stopped at the oak tree, he stopped exactly 3 steps behind. When she walked slowly, he slowed down. He matched her breathing. He became the invisible dog on her empty leash. One afternoon, they were walking past a large white house. A huge, angry bulldog rushed to the front gate. The bulldog barked wildly at Agatha, showing its sharp teeth. Agatha stopped, looking slightly nervous. She held her empty leash, waiting for her ghost dog to handle the scary situation. The stray dog did not hide this time. He stepped out from the shadows immediately. He walked quickly and placed himself directly between Agatha and the angry bulldog. He stood perfectly still, his back straight. He kept exactly 3 steps away from the old woman, like a highly trained guard dog. The stray dog stared the bulldog directly in the eyes. He did not bark. He just gave a low, deadly growl. The bulldog stopped barking, feeling the wild, dangerous energy. The big dog slowly backed away into the yard. Agatha smiled brightly, completely amazed by her wonderful invisible protector. She reached down to pet the empty air again. "Good boy, Max," she said happily. The stray dog stood quietly just inches away from her hand. He closed his eyes, pretending the warm hand was actually touching his dirty head. For a moment, he did not feel so lonely. Autumn brought heavy, freezing rains to the small town. Agatha still walked every day, carrying a black umbrella and her red leash. The streets were empty and covered in deep puddles. The stray dog followed closely, his thin body shaking violently in the cold, wet wind. He never complained. They reached the corner of Elm Street. The sidewalk was very slippery with wet, brown leaves. Suddenly, Agatha lost her balance. Her foot slipped forward, and she fell hard onto the wet concrete. She cried out in sudden pain. As she fell, her hand pulled the old leather leash hard. Snap! The sound was loud and sharp. The old, worn leather broke completely in half. Agatha sat in the muddy water, staring at the broken handle in her hand. The other half lay uselessly on the ground. She began to cry, but not because her knee hurt badly. "Max is gone," she sobbed loudly in the rain. "The line is broken. He is really gone." The broken leash destroyed her perfect illusion. She finally felt the total emptiness. She left the broken piece on the ground and walked home slowly, crying all the way. She locked her door. From across the street, the stray dog watched her go inside. He walked over to the broken piece of leather left in the puddle. He sniffed it carefully. He knew this object was very important to the sad woman. He carefully picked it up with his teeth and ran away. The next morning, the rain finally stopped. The sun shone brightly. Agatha opened her front door with red, tired eyes. She looked down at the wooden porch and gasped loudly. Right on her welcome mat, the two broken pieces of the leash were sitting there, connected together again. She picked it up with shaking hands. The two pieces were not glued or sewn. They were tied together in a messy, clumsy knot. The knot was covered in dried mud and small, deep teeth marks. No human hands could have made such a strange, dirty, animal-like knot. Agatha stared at it in pure shock. A ghost could not tie a physical knot with muddy teeth. She looked closer at the wooden porch. Right next to the welcome mat, there was a single, clear, muddy footprint. She touched it gently with her finger. Her heart skipped a beat. She knew the size of Max's paws perfectly. Golden retrievers have very large, heavy paws. But this muddy footprint was different. It was much smaller. It was the paw print of a medium-sized, stray street dog. The invisible ghost suddenly became a very real, living creature in her mind. Agatha did not know what to think. She walked to the town square to buy groceries. She did not bring the knotted leash. She felt nervous and confused. The stray dog still followed her, keeping his exact 3-step distance. But someone else was watching them very closely today. A neighbor had called the animal control office. They reported a dangerous, dirty wild dog stalking an old woman. As Agatha walked past the bakery, a white van suddenly stopped near the sidewalk. Two tall men jumped out quickly. They were holding a large, heavy metal net in their hands. The stray dog saw them instantly. His street survival instincts told him to run fast. But he looked at Agatha. She was walking slowly, unaware of the danger behind her. If he ran, the men might scare her or knock her down. He chose to stay perfectly still. Swish! The heavy net flew through the air and covered the stray dog completely. The rough ropes pulled tight around his neck and legs. It was incredibly painful. But the brave dog did not bark. He did not growl. He refused to make any loud noise that might terrify Agatha. He just lay there silently, struggling softly under the heavy net. The men grabbed the ropes, ready to drag him into the dark van. Suddenly, Agatha turned around. She heard the sound of heavy boots. She saw the dirty, small dog trapped in the net, staring at her with sad eyes. She looked at the small paws sticking out of the net. They perfectly matched the muddy footprint on her porch. This was the creature who tied the knot. This was the silent guardian who chased away the drunk man. He was not a ghost. He was a real, suffering friend. A sudden wave of protective anger washed over the old woman. She dropped her grocery bags onto the sidewalk. Oranges rolled into the street. She ran toward the men with surprising speed. She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out the broken, knotted red leash she had brought along. "Stop right there!" Agatha screamed loudly. The two men froze in surprise. Agatha pushed past them and knelt on the dirty ground. Her hands shook as she quickly clipped the metal hook of the leash onto the stray dog's dirty neck. She looked up at the men with fierce eyes. "What are you doing to him?" she yelled angrily. The officer frowned. "Ma'am, step back. This is a dangerous, colorless stray dog." Agatha held the leash tightly against her chest. She raised her chin proudly. "You are completely wrong," she said clearly. "This is my dog. Now let him go." Agatha walked home with the stray dog. He walked quietly beside her. The metal leash was heavy in her hand. For a moment, she felt brave. But when she opened her front door, the feeling disappeared. She looked down at the dirty, skinny animal. Reality hit her heart very hard. He was not her beautiful golden retriever. He was just a street dog. His fur was rough and brown. Max's fur was soft and golden. She felt a sudden wave of guilt. She felt like she was replacing her best friend too easily. She dropped the leash on the floor. "You cannot stay inside," she said coldly. She felt terrible, but she pushed him back outside onto the cold wooden porch. She went into the warm kitchen. She found a brand new plastic bowl and filled it with expensive dog food. She placed it outside on the porch for him. She closed the wooden door, but left it unlocked. She watched him through the glass window. The stray dog sniffed the new bowl. He did not eat. Instead, he pushed the door open with his nose. He walked slowly into the kitchen, ignoring the fresh, delicious food completely. Agatha wanted to yell, but she stopped. The dog walked straight to a dark corner of the kitchen. He used his nose to pull out an old, cracked ceramic bowl. It was Max's old water bowl. Agatha had pushed it into the corner months ago and forgot about it. The stray dog picked up the cracked bowl with his teeth. He carried it to the exact spot under the kitchen table where Max always ate. He put it down gently. Then he sat down next to it, looking up at Agatha. He was waiting for her permission to eat. Agatha gasped. How did he know that exact spot? She walked closer to him. The kitchen light shone brightly on the dog's face. For the first time, she looked closely into his eyes. Her breath caught in her throat. She saw something completely impossible and deeply heartbreaking. The dog's right eye was dark and clear, but his left eye was cloudy and white. He was completely blind in his left eye. Agatha covered her mouth with her trembling hands. Max had suffered from the exact same blindness in his left eye during his final years. Was this just a crazy coincidence? Or did the universe send her a broken mirror of her past? The stray dog did not move. He just looked at her with his one good eye, full of gentle understanding. He accepted her cold rejection without any anger at all. Agatha's mind was a mess of emotions. Seeing the blind eye was too much for her fragile heart. It hurt too deeply. It reminded her of Max's painful last days. She panicked. She did not want to feel this terrible pain again. She wanted to protect her empty, safe world. "Get out," she yelled suddenly. Her voice was harsh and loud. "You are not Max. Go away." She grabbed a broom and waved it near the dog. The stray did not growl. He just lowered his head sadly. He walked slowly out the back door into the dark night. Agatha slammed the heavy wooden door shut. She turned the metal lock until it clicked loudly. She turned off all the lights. A fierce thunderstorm began outside. Heavy rain hit the roof. Strong winds shook the windows. Agatha lay in her bed, pulling the warm blanket over her head. She felt safe, but her heart felt incredibly heavy. She could not sleep. Every time the thunder crashed, she thought about the thin dog out in the freezing rain. She tried to convince herself she did the right thing. He was just a wild animal. He would find a shelter. The storm raged all night. Around midnight, she heard a soft scratching sound at the back door. The dog was trying to get inside. Agatha ignored it. She forced herself to keep her eyes closed. After an hour, the scratching finally stopped completely. The silence felt much worse than the storm. When morning came, the rain had stopped. The sky was clear and bright. Agatha felt a terrible wave of guilt. She hurried to the back door and opened it quickly. She looked around the wet wooden porch. The stray dog was completely gone. The porch was totally empty. But then she looked at her small garden. Her favorite rose bushes were still standing perfectly straight. The wind should have destroyed them. She walked closer. She saw deep paw prints in the soft mud right next to the roses. The dog had not run away to find dry shelter. He had spent the entire freezing night lying down next to the roses. He had used his own thin body to block the violent wind from breaking her beautiful flowers. He protected the only things she loved. Agatha began to cry, realizing how foolish and cruel she had been. She looked back at the wooden door. Near the bottom edge, she saw a long, dark red stain. It was fresh blood. The dog had stepped on a sharp wooden splinter while scratching the door. He was hurt. A trail of small, red blood drops led away from the house. That afternoon, Agatha took her daily walk. But everything felt completely wrong. She held the broken, knotted leash in her hand. For weeks, she had felt a quiet presence exactly 3 steps behind her. Today, there was only empty air. The silence behind her was terrifying and incredibly loud. She missed the soft sound of his paws. She missed his quiet breathing. She realized the stray dog had slowly filled the huge hole in her heart. Now, the hole was back, bigger and darker than ever. She could not go to the park. She had to find him. Agatha looked down at the sidewalk. The small drops of dried blood were still there. They looked like a sad map. She decided to follow the red trail. The drops led her away from the safe streets of the town. They pointed toward the dark, wild edge of the valley. The trail led straight into the Coyote Woods. This was a dangerous, thick forest where wild animals lived. The townspeople never went there, especially not near sunset. But Agatha did not care about the danger. She only cared about the bleeding dog. She walked bravely into the dark, tall trees. The forest was very quiet and cold. The tall trees blocked the warm sunlight. Agatha kept her eyes on the ground, following the tiny red spots on the dry leaves. She walked deeper and deeper into the wild woods. She forgot to watch the time. The sky quickly turned black. The temperature dropped rapidly. Agatha began to shiver in her thin coat. It was completely dark now. She realized she was totally lost. She turned around, but all the trees looked exactly the same. Panic grabbed her chest tightly. She started to walk faster, breathing heavily in the cold air. Suddenly, her foot caught on a thick, hidden tree root. She fell forward very hard. Her face hit the rough dirt. There was a sharp crack sound. Her thick eyeglasses fell off and shattered against a rock. The world instantly became a blurry, confusing sea of terrifying dark shadows. She sat up slowly, her hands shaking. Her knee was bleeding. She reached out blindly in the dirt to find her broken glasses. She could not see anything clearly. Then, she realized something even worse. When she fell, she had dropped the red leather leash somewhere in the dark bushes. She was completely alone, lost, half-blind, and freezing. She had lost her way, and she had lost the only thing connecting her to the dogs she loved. Agatha hugged her knees and began to cry hopelessly in the dangerous darkness of the wild forest. Agatha heard a dry stick break in the dark woods. She stopped crying and held her breath. A low, evil growl echoed through the trees. It was not a dog. Through her blurry vision, she saw a pair of glowing, hungry yellow eyes. Then she saw two more pairs. A pack of wild, starving coyotes stepped out of the shadows. They circled her slowly. They showed their sharp, dirty teeth. They smelled her fear and her bleeding knee. Agatha was completely trapped. She closed her eyes tightly. She knew she was going to die alone in the cold dirt. Suddenly, a terrifying roar shook the forest. A dark shape exploded from the bushes like a bullet. It was the stray dog. He did not look small or scared anymore. He looked like a fierce, wild warrior. He threw his body directly at the largest coyote, biting its neck hard. The woods erupted into a violent, bloody war. There was barking, screaming, and the terrible sound of tearing fur. The stray dog was outnumbered 3-1. He was already hurt and bleeding from his paw. But he fought with incredible, crazy anger. He was fighting for his human. The dog used a brilliant, desperate strategy. He bit the coyote's legs and pulled them away from Agatha. He took all their attention. The coyotes bit his back, his neck, and his sides. Blood flew into the air. The stray dog screamed in pain, but he absolutely refused to retreat. He took every deadly bite meant for the old woman. His one good eye burned with pure loyalty. Finally, the stray dog bit the leader's nose with all his remaining strength. The coyote leader screamed in pain and ran away. The other two quickly followed, disappearing into the dark forest. The woods became silent again. The stray dog took one slow, shaking step toward Agatha. Then his legs gave out completely. He collapsed onto the cold dirt, covered in deep wounds. His breathing was wet and shallow. Agatha crawled blindly through the mud until her shaking hands found his body. "Oh no, please no," she cried, hugging his bleeding head. He was dying. She gently stroked his face. Suddenly, her fingers touched something cold and hard inside his mouth. She carefully pulled it out. She held it close to her blurry eyes. Her heart broke into a million tiny pieces. It was the metal clip of her broken red leash. During the brutal fight, he had found the leash she dropped. He had kept it safely in his mouth the whole time. Even while facing certain death, he had metaphorically tied himself to her. He was finally her dog. Agatha screamed for help until a passing forest ranger heard her. They rushed the dying dog to the town's emergency animal hospital. Agatha sat in the bright waiting room for 5 agonizing hours. She was covered in mud and blood, holding the metal leash clip tightly in her shaking hand. The surgery door finally opened. A tired doctor in green scrubs walked out. He looked very serious. "He lost a lot of blood," the doctor said quietly. "His wounds were terrible, but his heart is incredibly strong. He survived the surgery. He is sleeping now, but you can see him." Agatha cried tears of pure relief. Before she walked into the room, the doctor stopped her. He reached into his pocket. "When we cleaned him for surgery, we found something hidden deep inside the thick fur on his neck. It was tangled there like a secret treasure," the doctor explained. He handed Agatha the broken red leash. Attached to the metal clip was a small, dirty piece of metal. Agatha wiped her blurry eyes and looked at it closely. It was an old, scratched dog tag. The letters engraved on the metal were faded, but she could read them clearly. Max. Agatha gasped loudly. She had lost that tag in the park months before Max died. The stray dog must have found it using his incredible nose. He had hidden it in his own fur, carrying Max's name with him. He had truly tried to bring her lost love back to her. Agatha walked into the quiet hospital room. The brave dog lay on a metal table, wrapped in thick white bandages. He looked so small and fragile. As Agatha approached, his one good eye fluttered open. He looked at her softly, his tail giving one weak, happy thump against the table. Agatha reached into her coat pocket. She pulled out a brand new, beautiful red leather collar. It was perfectly intact. She held the open circle in front of the dog. Her hands were shaking slightly. She did not say a word. She just waited, offering him a real, permanent place. The dog looked at the empty collar. For a moment, he hesitated, remembering his hard life on the streets. Then, he looked at Agatha's loving, tearful eyes. Very slowly, using all his remaining strength, he lifted his tired, bandaged head. He gently pushed his face through the beautiful red circle. The empty collar was finally filled. Agatha carefully clicked the buckle closed. It fit perfectly. She leaned down and hugged his warm neck, burying her face in his clean fur. "Let's go home, Max," she whispered through her joyful tears. "This collar belongs to you now, forever and always."